Welcome into WatchBCSports.com. I'm Christian Gokel. Glad to have you hanging out with us here as we are covering all things BC athletics. We're pleased to be joined, as it is that time of the year, by the head lacrosse coach for your cadets, Dustin White. Dustin, we appreciate it, man. I know it seems like the season will never get here, but you guys are in it now, and now I know it's like a speeding train. It's just going to be you guys diving through that schedule. It'll be playoff time before you know it, but just take us back these last few months, gearing up for this season. What's the expectation for you guys, and what kind of a team do the cadets have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you for having me on again, and thank you for what you guys do. I'm excited to be a part of this and excited to spread the word about, what's going on with BC lacrosse. But, it obviously starts in the fall, really over the summer, guys playing travel ball, and then you kind of slowly ramp up in the fall with fall workouts and everything. Obviously, Coach Reich here did a great job with the guys. Had about 20, 25 guys every day that weren't playing football or doing any other sports that were just, dedicated to the weight room for 3 days a week. Just slowly ramping up. And then obviously come January 5th this year, we hit the ground running. And then we got going right after Martin Luther King weekend. And, it's a grind, as with any sport, just, every day trying to get after it, trying to stack each day. And obviously started off the season right. We beat River Ridge for the first time, a pretty good Atlanta school, historically very good program. Had a strong start, 8-2 win. And so it was good to see. You're not really going to get everything you want to get in as a coach before the first game because, we start practice and then you have only 3 weeks of practice because we have tryouts, and we had about 65 guys come to tryouts. And then you take, roughly 33 guys from there and you have 3 weeks to implement everything before your first game. So it was a little challenging, but the boys stepped up to the task, and it was great to come off 8-2 victory against River Ridge. So we're 1-0 right now.
I know it's interesting because it's a sport where probably almost everybody plays another sport as well when it comes to lacrosse. I know there's some guys that specialize in it now because there is more and more opportunities at the collegiate level. But for the most part, guys over there playing other sports. For you guys, what's the balance right now? Is it more freshmen, sophomores, or do you have kind of a experienced team back this year?
Yeah, so we were very young last year. Very young last year. We had several freshmen starting, very tiny freshmen at the time, obviously. And this year we have a great mix. We have some really strong juniors and seniors, but we also have a healthy number of sophomores that are going to contribute. We only took one freshman for varsity this year, which historically we've never really done. We've always taken a lot of freshmen, but with our core, it's really all throughout our sophomores, juniors, and seniors. They're all just contributing. And so we're not super senior heavy. I mean, of course, we're going to miss those guys. But right now it's very evenly spread out. So I guess a little bit older, but these guys have been playing together for a long time. A lot of the guys on the team have been playing since they were in 4th or 5th grade, right? And so these guys coming up, it's just so much easier to implement the things we want to do at a high level because they've started at a younger age. So it's been great.
I know a very competitive sport in the state of Georgia. And again, I think when I graduated in 2010, it was starting to pick up, but now it's off and running. For you guys, what is the kind of lacrosse development like in the city of Savannah? Because I know there's more and more programs developing at the high school level that are really starting to make runs in the playoffs. If I had to imagine, that starts when kids are in middle school and elementary school.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's in a nutshell, I mean, that's a long story, but in a nutshell, Christian Harris with Low Country Lacrosse, he's his store is right off of Paulson Street, right next to Kayak Cafe on Durin. And he came in, and I want to say around 2014. Obviously, there was guys that, I'd spend 10 minutes trying to list all the guys that were part of the growth of lacrosse way back in the day. Dan Umble, who he played at Duke, but he kind of really started it, obviously, with Dick McAllister as well. But right now, I mean, there's so many guys. But right now, Christian, we have what we call Coastal Empire Lacrosse, and that's our rec league. And we've been doing that for forever. He's the guy that heads it. Yeah. And, these guys, we have an 8-and-under team, right? And so we have the ability to offer 8-and-under, 10-and-under, 12-and-under, et cetera. And also they can play over the summer and the fall. We have a great summer camp through Christian with Low Country Lacrosse, where actually the West Point lacrosse staff comes down. And, we have about 200 boys out there just playing lacrosse, getting instructed by the West Point staff. And Coach Alberici, very, very close with him, but he was, he used to be the assistant coach for the USA team. And so, some really good guys coming down just to introduce and help grow the game. And so it's taken off the past couple of years. I mean, there's the lacrosse community in Savannah is very close. All the coaches at all these schools in the local area, we're all pretty tight, and we just want to see the game grow. And we're finally starting to see it really grow as it grows at the youth level. Well, now they come in, and they're coming in as freshmen in high school, and they've already played. Right. And so, Christian has a huge role to play with that. And then it's funny because this last week they started practices, right? And so, we have the middle schools just practicing right now, and some of the teams practice at our facility. And so right after our high school practice ends, they hop on the field. But it's just great to see, because when I was in Savannah, I graduated from BC in 2014, but there was probably 40 people that played lacrosse, like in the entire area. And I mean, it was nothing. And but to see how it's grown, there's, we call them the pioneers of lacrosse. Like, you have the Dan Umble, you have the Dick McAllister, and all these guys that played such a huge role and honestly put a lot of time into it. And so it was kind of easy for me, obviously, when I took over. I have the numbers, right? And so it's been great. And obviously they all coached me as well. So it's kind of just a full circle moment, really.
It is cool because it's America's oldest sport, and you have that development with it as well. But with you guys, I know coming off the Olympics, all the excitement yesterday with hockey and the way that sport is growing as well across the country. I mean, I feel like just with the physicality of it and the objectives, it's hockey on grass a lot of times. And with the tight-knit community inside of that, especially when you're building something, I know a lot of these kids have now, it seems like probably yesterday for you, but these guys have spent 60-70% of their life playing lacrosse. So a little bit different skill level now in Savannah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's the most rewarding part, right? Is because, yes, we all have our rival high schools, right? We'll play against, the Calvary, the Country Day, the Richmond Hill. But at the end of the day, all these boys play together, over the summer, over the fall. And like, all the coaches get to work with all these boys. And it is a close community. And yes, we're going to be competitive come springtime, but like, to be able to coach alongside other coaches and be able to, coach players at different schools, it's just, when you see them play, especially at the next level, if that's their goal, and it's like, oh wow, we're really making something happen here. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be tough to compete with the Atlanta schools, and that's the question that I get asked a lot is, when's BC going to finally win state in lacrosse? And it's like, they've got, for every one guy we have playing lacrosse at the high school level, they have about 50. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, it's just trying to be as competitive as possible. I'm trying to grow that, but yeah, I mean, the numbers have just grown and grown, and it's been really awesome to see. And I will say, last thing I'll say with that is, it's not too late. I didn't start playing lacrosse till the end of my 8th grade year. Yeah. And, it's just about getting a stick in the kid's hand, because you're right. It is so physical. I think it's much for people that haven't watched lacrosse, they don't realize how physical this game actually is. And that's why I think football players really love it. It helps with their footwork, but at the same time, it's the only thing in the world. This is what I tell my guys. It's the only thing in the world where you can take a metal pole and hit another man with it and not go to jail. Yeah. And so you can be competitive, and that's why Larson Little loves it, right? Like, he can get after it. He loves playing football, but he loves hitting guys in lacrosse too. And obviously you have to do it in a legal way, but it's a very good balance of, having the finesse of basketball, but also having, some contact as well.
Again, when I was coming up, it was just like you said, it's football players who needed something to do in the spring. And so they're like, hey, why don't you come try out lacrosse? Now a little bit more specialized, people who've been playing for a little bit longer, and with that, just a little bit more competitive now around the state. But just like any other high school sport, when people say, hey, when are you going to win a state championship? Well, when I get the right players that roll through, because it's just, you can only play with the hand you're dealt. And I think you guys got a pretty good squad this coming season. Tell us about a few guys that when the fans come and watch, they should be watching out for.
Yeah, so this year, I mean, the first 3 guys obviously are 3 captains this year. Wyatt Estabrook, who will be wearing number 10, very good football player, obviously, but he glides on the lacrosse field. He's very talented. He's a midfielder for us, so he's running both ways back and forth pretty much the whole game. But his athletic ability, as just covering him with football, he's a stud. And then the other 2 captains are JoJo Moffitt and Avery Allen. All 3 of those guys we took as freshmen, years ago. I still remember when Avery sat in my office in his 8th grade year thinking about coming to BC, and it's just like, now he's a senior. But, these guys, and he's been our lefty attackman, and he's such a good leader, but also very, very smart. JoJo Moffitt, he only plays lacrosse, and so does Avery. They've both been playing for forever together. But JoJo pretty much hunkers it down on the defensive end. He's paired up with Hobie Leonard, who is Reef Leonard's brother, and so obviously Reef and Hobie play lacrosse as well. Reef recently hopped in the goal for us. We had an injury with our starting goalie. And so, I looked at Reef and I said, hey, man, I know you don't play goalie, but we don't have a goalie right now. And he looked at me and said, yes, coach, whatever you need. And so he actually hopped in the game when we played River Ridge. And I think he had like 15 saves, but he just said, whatever you need, coach. And so, yeah, those are a handful of guys. But, we have a ton, right? We have Wiley Chandler, who's a junior. He's been playing with Wyatt for forever. Ace Two Guns, his older brother Kaiva Two Guns, and his dad actually coaches with the JV. They're Native Americans, and so he has that heritage of wanting to play the game. And, we just have guys that have been playing together forever, and that's what it's about, right? Like, if you've been playing lacrosse for so long, especially with each other over the summer, over the fall, you kind of get each other's play styles, right? And so these guys really can work off one another, and they're just playing well. And then talk about guys like Larson Little, who, he picked up lacrosse last year. And so it took a while for him to realize the stick skills, but he's facing off, which you just have to be real strong if you want to be good at that. And, we had a Coach Strobel, Jacob Strobel. He was actually, I played with him at BC. He graduated in 2015, but he's our face-off coach this year. And we just worked with Larson and was like, hey, if you can figure this out, you're going to have a lot of fun. And so he's been a great leader, but also he's been able to see some time because he picked it up quick. And so it's been good.
A lot of great athletes on the field, and I know we can go on BC's website, check out the full schedule for you guys, and I think people should get out and absolutely watch. I know people are familiar with a lot of the traditions around BC, and that's what's so important with it. It keeps the alumni coming back year after year, and you really don't see it in very many places, the alumni support that you guys get. I know a lot of people know the traditions in football and baseball and basketball, but for you guys, what are some of the things people should know when they start following that BC lacrosse program?
Yeah, no, it's a lot. BC lacrosse, obviously I was a part of it, right? And that's kind of the full circle moment for me that sometimes I have to kind of hit myself a little bit, and I'm like, wow, I'm here coaching. Like, what a privilege and an honor, right? Very humble to be a part of it. But, it's very special. The BC lacrosse family is what I say. It started from really nothing. In 2010 is, I guess, when you could say the program really started. But in 2009, I'll give the quick summary story. But in 2009, we had, Dick McAllister was obviously at the school with his son, Ricky. And the head coach at the time on staff went by the name of Carl Moore. And we didn't have a lacrosse program. And so Dick went to Ricky and was like, hey, if you want a lacrosse program, you need some boys to play. Like, you need to get your friends. And so he was just bothering his friends all the time, like, hey, you got to come play lacrosse. You got to come play lacrosse. And trying to get guys to try something new, because the hardest part about lacrosse, honestly, to pick it up, and I've been there, so I get it, is when you're a really good athlete, especially in high school, it's hard to say, yeah, I want to try something I know I'm not going to be good at. Yeah. Like, it'd be like trying to play basketball and not know how to dribble. Like, you're not going to want to do that. But, it took him pestering his friends. And then, the story goes, a lot of people know about it. They're, the McAllisters are still involved to this day. But, he died from a driving accident on January 1st, 2010. And, once that happened, I always think, like, some parents could, who knows what you're going to do in that situation, right? Like, unless you've been in that situation when you lose your son, you don't know what you're going to do. But one thing I realized in 8th grade, when I was in 8th grade at the time, is, Coach Dick, he kept coaching. And his friends, the way they wanted to honor, their classmate, his freshman year at BC that just passed away, only never got to suit up for a game. Those boys came out to play lacrosse. And that's really how the program started. Those boys came out to remember their friend. And were they good at the time? Not really, no. But there was a lot of work to be done. And I remember coming up into BC when I started my sophomore year, we had about 20 guys on the team, but Coach Dick was still a coach. And it's just like, you lose your son January 1st, and then, you're still coaching lacrosse. And, like, you just didn't say, I'm going to, feel bad for myself and stay in a room and just sulk. Like, he went out there and after it, and he still educates, BC and St. Vincent's with the drinking and driving program that they do. And his wife Ellison does a lot with that. And it's just, we're very thankful for that. But to fast forward, with our traditions, in 2013, you know, it was kind of decided we shouldn't retire the number 10. And so, you know, his best friend, Hunter Abear, wore the jersey that year in 2013. And then ever since then, we passed down that jersey at halftime of senior day. And so Hunter Abear, during the ceremony that year, I'm actually looking at the picture right now. Hunter Abear gave me the jersey for the passing it down that day. And then ever since then, we've been doing that. And what's important to say with that is we do that because of two things. One, it's important to realize we're playing this game for something other greater than ourselves. And I think that's very important for any athlete to realize. Like, it's a privilege to play lacrosse. It's a privilege to play football. It's a privilege to suit up and be able to play for something other than yourself. And number two, realize that everything matters, right? Everything matters. We passed that jersey down as a reminder of, you know, that it's a privilege to play this game.
Right.
And it's a really cool ceremony, but also at the same time, you know, it lets the boys know that they weren't even born. I think I might be dating myself, but they weren't born when this happened, right? This was in 2010. It's 2026 now, and some of these guys weren't even alive when this happened, but we're still able to appreciate that culture. Right. And, you know, ring the bell when we go to take the field. And so the reality is that the boys get it. And I think the fact that our coaches, you know, when Coach Dick finally retired and Dennis Daly took over, and then after Dennis Daly, Peter Newman, who had a son that graduated from here in 2019, very good lacrosse player, and then it was me coming in, you know, just as a past player and alum from BC, seeing that those coaches kept those traditions and kept honoring Ricky with his jersey, and to now for me to be able to do it, it's just it's very humbling. And like I said, sometimes I have to remind myself, like, wow, I can't believe we have such a great culture here.
Yeah, special. And BC is a special place. Again, a big season coming up for you guys, really talented team. Anything else the fans should know before we let you get out of here?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, we have a really packed schedule. Just thinking of it right now, we've got to go to May River this Thursday. But something I'm really excited about is this Saturday. We will actually be playing at Paulson Stadium at Georgia Southern.
Let's go.
Playing in the huge stadium there. I may be wrong on this, but from what I was told, this will be the very first competitive lacrosse game at the stadium. And then right after we play Bishop England, Jacksonville and High Point, two very good Division I schools, will be taking the field and playing at Paulson Stadium as well. And so, you know, we have that game going on, which is going to be huge. We're playing a couple other Atlanta schools. Hebron Christian's coming down. They're a very, very good Atlanta program. And so just trying to – and then we're also playing some really good South Carolina schools. Porter-Gaud, Wando's going to be really good. Oceanside's going to be really good. Just trying to ramp ourselves up as much as possible because, you know, 3 years ago, it was like the dream to make the Elite Eight. It was like, if we can get to the Elite Eight, you know, we really did it. Like, that's the goal. And now that we've made it the past couple of years to the Elite Eight, the boys look at themselves like, well, hey, let's go to the Final Four and then just see what happens. And so now that we're setting our goals higher and higher, whereas, you know, 5-10 years ago, if an Atlanta school came down, it was like you knew you were going to get rocked. But now the boys have, you know, they just have that in them, like, oh, we can do this. Like, yeah, lacrosse in Savannah's small, but now it's growing and now we can compete. And I'll tell you, it feels really good when an Atlanta school comes down and we can be competitive and show them what we can do.
Always. It sounds like you're taking the Danny Britt method to heart where, hey, going to schedule really hard teams and then let's go to play at Paulson Stadium. So, I mean,
absolutely.
Well, again, Dustin White, head coach for BC Lacrosse. We're going to be broadcasting some games. We'll put out that schedule on Watch BC Sports. But if you can, get out, watch this team. It's a really exciting sport. And once, it's like you said, it's not, you always want to go watch what you know. But if you can get out, sit next to a parent, pester them, get them to explain the rules a little bit. Once you get it, it's a really fun sport to watch. So get out there and support the cadets. Dustin, we appreciate the time, man. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.